Hello, everyone. Welcome to Not Us, a podcast hosted by two sisters, myself, Angela, and my gorgeous sister, Samantha, where we discuss change, choices, and celebrate all the messy bits in between.
We're not licensed doctors, therapists, gurus, or witches. The stories and opinions expressed in this episode are our own, for entertainment only, and subjected to change. Swearing is possible. And remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe.
Oh, and thank you to everyone who has already subscribed, who's joined our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes channels. TikTok is still yet to come. Who knows? Maybe by this episode it'll be there. So just look at whatever we've put down below. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for your comments and your conversation. I love, sis, how our community, even though it's a little one, is starting to build, and it's really exciting for us.
Yeah. And thank you to friends and family who are commenting and giving us even constructive feedback. So we hear you and we're taking that on board, and we really appreciate the energy that you're putting back into this podcast.
Yes.
So
today,
with that, we are speaking about adult relationships. You know, the friendship type.
Okay, good. I was just wondering how X-rated this is. It is a Friday night, so.
No, we're talking about friendships, how to make them as adults, how to define them, how to keep them, and why as adults it becomes so much harder than it was when we were children, and you might bond over sharing crayons, or as younger adults where, you know, maybe you were bonding over tequila or vodka or whatever it may have been. And I think why this is relevant to us or me is because when you move countries, you have to invest in forming new friendships and relationships. How do you feel about that? I mean, you've only moved to the UK almost 2 years ago now, a couple of days, and it'll be 2 years. And how have you found making friends in a cosmopolitan or metropolitan hub?
Well, you know, I think firstly, the stats say that 12% of people around the world say that they don't actually have adult friendships, which is quite something. I think that ends up being around 960 million people across the globe who feel like they don't have close friends. I am not one of those people. I have, since I was very little, been able to form some kind of friendship really easily. My family used to laugh because we would go camping, and then while they were still putting up the caravan in the tent, I would be walking around the caravan park saying hello to everyone, making friends with everyone, including the chameleons in the trees and, you know, all of life's creatures, which is really interesting because I am naturally is it an introvert, extrovert? I think there's an in-between one right now. So I'm quite comfortable being insular, but I like meeting people. I'm interested in people, no matter what their station in life. And so there's always something to be found out about everyone, and everyone's got a story. So I really like people's stories. So it's easy for me to connect with people. But that does pose a question to me. What do you classify as a friendship?
Well,
because friendship can mean different things to different people, right?
100%. And so is that question to me or to yourself? Because you did say this poses a question to me. And it's called an outrovert. An outrovert is an introvert extrovert. Well, it's quite interesting because I've always, when I was younger, I was super shy. And so making friends was not easy for me. But in circumstances at school or in the workplace, I come across as an extrovert, but I'm actually an introvert, but maybe more an outrovert. Friendship for me means different things, and I don't easily call people friends. So I know a number of people, and I could party with them or have a good time with them or even invite them over for dinner or whatever that might look like. But it's quite a high standard to be considered a friend for me. And
No
so,
pressure.
and no pressure. I don't apply pressure. It's you are not necessarily labeled a friend. Um, yeah. So although
What
having
would you
moved away,
label as a friend? Well, what would you label as a friend?
yeah. But I think
Who
so. I think
hits the mark?
yeah. So I mean, I think it's going to be the normal definition. Who would you call if you were in a situation, etc. Which sounds all very well, but I think you can pretty much call anyone in a situation, and unless they're a jerk, they would, help you. But for me, a friend is who am I comfortable speaking to about situations that I might be going through, or who am I comfortable exposing myself to, exposing my vulnerability to, and so I am a lot more discerning in terms of who I reveal my true self to, where there isn't a mask up or a expectation of how I need to perform, or I'm a little bit of a rescuer and a fixer. So am I playing a particular role where it's reciprocal and it's a back and forth exchange of energy? And so, yes, I have a number of people around me, and I have had so throughout my life. But I do spend or like to spend quite a bit of time with myself. And there are very few people that I will necessarily expose myself to and even ask for help or just share what I might be going through without feeling judgment or that I might be looked at differently.
That is an outstanding point that you make in terms of how you feel with certain people. That would what you would be classifying as friendship. I think as Maya Angelou said, people won't remember the things you say, but how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And that is a really good point, because nowadays, when we speak about relationships, and in this case, friendships, there's lots of talk about how your nervous system engages when you're around someone. So that's something that is making me think about, the people that I call friends, does my nervous system relax around them? Do I feel safe? Can I be vulnerable, as you're saying?
Yeah.
And that's a really good question for me to ask, because I've got loads of people that I call my friends, and they are friends in different areas.
Mm.
But I don't necessarily feel my nervous system relaxing when I'm around them. And we know you can be with a partner in a relationship where your nervous system isn't calmed down either. And then I wonder, can you actually be friends with them? It's one thing being lovers, but being friends. Anyway, I digress. I'm digressing close to the lover section. Let's go back.
And I mean, sometimes friends become lovers. So that's absolutely okay. But I do want to that's a really good point that you bring up, which is being aware of your nervous system. And I think often we are unaware of our nervous system, unaware of how we feel around different groups of people or people. And I wonder if it's only me that has felt this way, but sometimes I will almost self-gaslight and go, well, the problem must be with me. Or such a great person, why do I not want to, why do I feel exhausted spending time with this person? Or why don't I feel that I can be my authentic self? Or why do I feel judged? Or something along those lines. So it's also just sometimes we forget that what any kind of relationship is an energy exchange. And some energy you will vibe with and other energies you won't vibe with. It's not a good or a bad. It's just the mixing of energy.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Because there's also when you gaslight yourself and you're like, but everyone else loves them, it must be me. But as you say, just some, oil and water just are never going to blend well together. So
Sis, let's maybe bring this back to us, because as we've advised people or alluded to, we are sisters, but we didn't grow up together. We met when Angela was in her late 20s and I was in my early 20s. We have established it was 22 and 26. We've known each other for 25 years, no, 26 years. But because we didn't grow up together, we've had to form a friendship and decide whether we wanted to be part of each other's lives. And we've made that decision. You're stuck with me through what's the saying? Through
thick and thin.
There we go. And it was right, it was right in my head. Through thick and thin.
I mean, I
hail or snow,
just
sunshine or snow.
Yes, rain and sunshine. I thought I'd let you just sit there and panic a bit, considering the constant alluding to my age. I mean, why don't you just tally it all up and have a huge neon sign on the screen? But yes, I'm reassessing this friendship with my sibling. But it's true. One just assumes that if someone is your family, that they're your friend as well. And I don't necessarily think that that's true. I'd be interested to know from those of you watching, do you classify your family members as your friends, or do you save friendship conversations for people right outside of your family? But back to us, we knew each other for a number of years, probably more than half of that, where we had a certain level of friendship. But because we didn't grow up together, we had to learn to sister and choose if we wanted to be friends or not. Fortunately, we are so lucky that we have gotten more comfortable with being sisters over the years. And I always wanted a baby sister. So, now I have one. But we've also chosen, or life has directed us in that pathway to become really close friends. And so now you are not only my sister, but you are one of my very best friends. And as I was saying to you a little while ago, if I leave town, even though we're in a different country, because I feel safe with you, I know my animals are safe with you, and because I know you so well, when I leave a note for my babysitters, it's if there's anything that happens, to contact my sister, even though you're in another country. There are people that live down the road that they're friends. I love them, but my babysitters contact you first. So,
it's because you know that I will love your dogs. I don't know what we're going to do with Arnold. I will love your dogs the way you do, and I will have to figure out how to look after Arnold. I'm afraid of cats, and Angela has an older cat, Arnold, but he's super sweet. He's super sweet because he stays away from me. Whereas her previous cat, well, Tiki was she was the devil. Actually. She was the devil.
He's Tiki.
And I absolutely love our friendship and our sisterhood, and ditto, you are all of that to me. So thank you, sis. But I think what allowed us to actually form a friendship was proximity. We were living quite close to each other, within a 20-kilometer radius. We were navigating new relationships around about the same time. So we were both either in relationships or dating women. And I think that gave us commonality in terms of where we were in our life, what we were experiencing in our life, and it brought us closer together, or at least it allowed us to have that commonality, I think is what I'm trying to say. Have that commonality to grow a friendship from. Do you agree with that, or do you think there was another ingredient or other ingredients that would have allowed our friendship to form?
Other than my natural
charm,
sunshiny personality that you just couldn't stay away from? Probably not. No, I agree with you. They were, because we've got another sister, and her and I have never really lived close by to one another. And when we have connected and met, have got on so well. I absolutely adore her. And every single minute I've spent with her has been completely wonderful. But we don't have an adult relationship really, because we were put in each other's lives because, you know, I came back into your lives as my birth family. So, but then if I think of even with my own, when I say my own brother, my brother who I grew up with, we also only now have, as adults, have had to create adult relationships. But that has a different kind of safety, because he would be someone that knew everything about me growing up, and that familiarity, which is probably what you have with Tracy and Jade. Like, you've grown up together, so you know each other in a different way than anyone else knows you. So as adults, it makes for a really comforting adult relationship as well. So I think it can be a little bit of both. That familiarity of someone really knowing you.
Yeah.
I'm going to digress off of that because that can also hold you back in some ways. But in a healthy situation, people who kind of know your history and really understand you make for such great adult relationships. But then having, you know, exactly, commonality. And that is how a lot of people find friendships. They find a church group or a dance group or a boxing club or a ballet class or whatever, reading clubs, online, everything nowadays after COVID. And they can form the most incredible friendship bonds. What I would say is, and it's new to me because growing up, I didn't like having friendships with women. I didn't get on with women. I liked spending time with men, not because I used to drink too much tequila and behave badly, but I enjoyed male conversation and companionship. And then even when I went into having relationship with women, which is interesting considering I didn't really get on with women so much, and spent such a large portion of my adult life in relationship and marriage to a woman, I don't know that I had that many female friends. I had a couple, but it's only been in the last couple of years, and maybe even with our sisterhood, that I've really begun, and Petra, that I've really begun to understand the power of female friendship and that real kind of sisterhood that, of course, is written about throughout the ages. Is such an amazing thing. And what a beautiful time in my life to discover this. As you know, it's a great time to discover it.
You have raised so many cool points, and now I'm going to try and I want to go back to a couple of them. So first point that I want to raise, which I think is great, is you raised the point around Tracy. And Tracy and myself obviously grew up together, but Tracy has lived abroad or away from us for many, many years. And it was only in 2019 that her and I actually rekindled our friendship, rekindled our relationship. And we had gone on a holiday to London together. And I was so nervous going into that holiday. I was like, it's one thing being sisters. It's another thing is like when you've had a lot of time away from the relationship of being sisters, and now you're coming into a new dynamic where you're going, do we actually like each other beyond the bond of sisterhood? So going into that, and we were going to spend 10 days together, and we're both notoriously difficult in terms of living in close proximity or living together. So I remember going into that holiday thinking, oh shit, is this going to go tits up? And is she going to like me? And when I spoke to her about it a couple of years later, she was like, she felt the same, because even though we had grown up together, there had been so much time spent apart and growing as individual adults that when we made this decision to go on vacation together without partners, without children, etc., you have what's in front of you is, yes, it might be your sister, but it's an adult, and whether you get on or not, is open for debate. So that was really great. And I agree with the point that you raised, which is sometimes your growing up relationships can have a limitation in terms of forming a relationship, because we all play different roles, especially growing up. So that's what I wanted to say. I think that was great. The other element, or the second point that I thought that you raised, which was quite interesting, is your comment about not having many female friends or friendships. There you sound exactly like Denise, who prefers the company of men. I just want to understand what the conversation is about. Is it about football, cars? Like, what is your typical conversation with your male friends?
No, I actually really enjoy just views on life and kind of deep conversation. I think that I love understanding how a male brain works, or maybe because it is sometimes quite uncomplicated. Like, I do think in general, men are they kind of just communicate what they're thinking about, and there's a confidence in that conversation. Because I think sometimes as women, we are thinking so far ahead of what we want to say, how we want to be perceived, how we want people to read us, that to just kind of get into a conversation, be comfortable with your views being known, comfortable on your stances in life, just to be able to say, fuck it, this is what I believe, whatever that might be. I found that to be not as free-flowing as I find with certainly the men that I've engaged with growing up and in my life.
So what changed for you? What do you think changed? I mean, besides the fact that you developed a friendship with both myself and Petra, who are born 4 days apart, same year, same sign. If you need a girlfriend, you need to find yourself a Leo girlfriend. But what do you think changed? Because I have a view on it, but I'd like to give you a moment to maybe answer that.
Maybe I changed because I think once you can befriend yourself and be really comfortable with who you are in your own skin, then it's easier to have friendships with women around you that may be similar, or be a little bit more vulnerable. Because if you're stepping into life and trying to be quite protective of yourself, it's a little harder to let people in. So I think a lot of the time, and that probably came with my career as a performer, my walls and barriers were quite high. And that had been mentioned to me by a number of people. They couldn't really penetrate, or when they were in, they would be afraid of disappointing me, or, there's always been that. But I think once I just got really grounded in myself, not afraid to be vulnerable in friendship, knowing that I have choice, and I can say no, and all of those things, I think that might have shifted it slightly. What's your
being
perception
able to show up? Well, I was going to say exactly that. I think a lot of the time, especially attractive women who have been who are often seen as a threat. And so what happens is you walk into situations or relationships and you're already on the back foot because you feel judged, or you feel that you might be a threat, or whatever that feeling might be. And so sometimes we ourselves come with, enter into a friendship or into a situation with so much baggage that it's hard for us to actually show up authentically. And so people can't necessarily have a relationship with you. And that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, it's not really that women change. I think it's more that you've shown up more comfortable with yourself in all aspects. So comfortable with the way you look, comfortable with your position as a stage, as a performing actress, comfortable in, some people are going to be uncomfortable by your energy. That's their problem. So I think more than anything, it's how we show up in the world. And the reason why I'm saying this is because part of my moving to the Netherlands has forced me to show up differently. Not in a negative way, but to really figure out how do I want to show up? Do I want to continue to have my walls up and keep people at a distance? Or do I want to peel back and expose myself and show, the soft side of myself and the hard side? And there have been times where I've got hurt in that process. but that's okay. That's part of the journey. And so I think once you are comfortable with yourself, it's easier to have relationships with other people. I wanted to just say,
It
I
always
wanted to put a
comes back
disclaimer
up.
there. 100%, but it's an
Well,
exchange of energy.
yeah, it is an exchange of energy. It's a give and receive, give and receive. And I also think there's something else that I live by, and that is that when we have relationships with people, sometimes it can fall into three categories. Sometimes it's for a reason. It's reason, season, lifetime. Sometimes there's a reason that you are friends for a while, or you have a relationship or a creationship, whatever that is, for a while. Sometimes it's just for a season of your life, and then some are for a lifetime. And I think if you can get really comfortable with that, then there's not so much pressure on friendships to be forever, or you know, because I think we put a lot of pressure on friendships, on same as our partners, anyone really close to us, and that's usually our own stuff. So it always goes back to, once we do our own work, then what we can reflect and what we can get back is massively different than if we don't do our own work.
Has there been a friendship or relationship that has taught you something significant about friendships and about yourself? And what was that, if there has?
There are many. I have many examples. So, my gosh. In fact, in us considering what friendships are, it's been interesting because I've been giving a lot of thought to it. And I realize in that conversation around friendships being different things to different people, that sometimes me, in my, I don't know what it is, I am very, glass half full. And so there comes, when I meet someone, I come with an innocence. I don't meet people and think straight off, I'm a bit suspicious of you. I generally come in, unless my gut is telling or is giving me the signals that I now know it gives me, if I should perhaps keep some distance from someone. But I generally come in quite open. What I've discovered, I was thinking about one of my friendships, as you've asked. There was a time, like, if I'm really close to you, I will share things with you. And so I had a friend who's still a great friend. I love him dearly. But many, many, many years ago, we were in a production, and there was a bit of information that was quite private, and they needed to let me know this information. But he accidentally left a voice note on my in my voicemail box, because it was before the time when we had voice notes you could delete. It was in my voicemail box, but it was to someone else. And in that message, he said to them, "That's fine, but don't tell her, because she'll tell everyone." Or I don't think he said I'll tell everyone, but it was pretty much like, she's like .com. And I was mortified, because I was like, I don't actually tell people anything. It's because I see you as one of my closest people that I tell you everything. And so I realized that friendship wasn't that, friendships looked different to different people. So that was a real lesson for me then, even though that's someone I love and if they're watching this, they'll know who they are, but I won't be sharing that. But then also for me, that's been really confusing, if I can go to a second one, is as a performer, we form really close friendships when we're on productions and casts, because you're living together, touring together. And those friendships very often last you your lifetime. They're just you having common experiences. You're suffering together, you're rejoicing together, you're living in different countries together, all of that. So they're quite deep forming. But as I've moved into doing a lot more corporate work, I've gone into the workspace with a similar approach. Whereas I see colleagues in the workspace, I form friendships with them that feel like I treat them as though they're similar. Like I'm really there as a friend. Sometimes that really works, but that's a very different arena for a lot of people. You'll know more about this than I well that I'm learning now. And so I've had to learn quite quickly that those friendships are more acquaintance friendships, and I need to be a little bit more guarded sometimes. But it's a fine balance, because I want to show up authentically. I want to show up as kind. I want to take a chance and be myself. And if that backfires on me, that's not on me, it's on the other person. So it's a whole new world negotiating friendships in that arena versus what I've grown up with and as a performer. How about for you?
Well, thank you for asking. I think actually our friendship, our journey has taught me a lot. That you can love someone, as you often do with friends, but you also have to give people the space that they need to explore and to be their authentic self. And if I think about you, and especially because as a performer, as you said, you would have a number of people that would be part of your day-to-day life, and then we would see them at Christmas time, and it was like hot and heavy. And I think for a lot of the time, I felt a sense of jealousy in terms of that. Maybe a sense of jealousy, but also a sense of judgment. For me, because I'm so guarded in terms of how I have friendships, I thought your friendships were pretty superficial, because there was a new best friend every other day, and I'm saying that not with judgment now. I realized that the judgment was actually within myself, and so I had to learn that you can have different types of friendship. I think actually what I'm trying to say is I'm quite possessive with my friendships. And so what you've taught me, and what our friendship has taught, is that you can love someone. You don't have to be possessive of them. You need to give them the space and the freedom for them to grow. And if they're meant to be part of your lifetime, if they're a lifetimer, you never ever lose them. And it's not a competition. So it's definitely something I learned through our friendship.
Well, I'm glad that I could
teach me,
bring that example to light. I didn't want to say teach. I don't want to sound like Mr. Miyagi to my baby sister.
Well,
I'm sorry that's because I think that very often we take for granted our family and those that are closest to us. So when we are in friendship circles, sometimes we can neglect those we're closest to in the room, right? And we can be quite expressive with everyone else.
No, but that's not what you were doing at all. At all. So you were just, as you said right at the beginning, you're the type of person that can go to a camping site and you would have made friends with everyone. I'm not that person. I'm the type of person that would be hiding behind you until such time as I felt comfortable to come forward. And so the lesson in terms of you was not that you needed to change. It was really just understanding that if you want to allow a friendship or a relationship to grow, you have to give it space for it to show up, for that person to show up authentically. And it does not take away from what you have, what the two of you have. So you absolutely do not need to apologize. And I didn't bring that up to shame you at all. That was me, 100%. The judgment was with me. It was having to learn that possession is not the same as love. I think is really the lesson. And if you really love someone, you've got to allow them to be who they are. And if that means, having 20 best friends, it's okay. It doesn't mean that you are a lesser best friend. It just means, like any relationship, one person can't be everything to you.
Yeah. And it's a lot of pressure to put on one person. I mean, this sounds like we're speaking about relationship as the romantic kind as well, where we make our partner, well, we try and force our partners to be everything embodied in one human form. But we will chat about that at another time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
let's switch gears a little bit. Okay, sis, changing gears. Let me ask you another question. Have you lost friendships because of change or outgrown them?
I have. And it's always a little painful to speak about those, right? Mostly because I was probably part of why those ended. More life happens. And I do like, and you've heard me say very often that you do the best you can with what you have available to you at the time. So if I think of just friendships when I was still in South Africa, some of those friendships, we just outgrow each other, right? So if you're not aligned in terms of what you're wanting from your life, maybe that's your spirituality. It could be who you like to spend time with. There's so many factors that are included in that. I've had a couple of really big ones. One was many, many years ago. I went through quite a big life change, and I was leaving my husband at the time. And it was as I was discovering that I was attracted to women. But at the same time, I was also a worship leader in quite a big church. So I was kind of hitting all of these big boxes, being married to someone of the opposite sex, being attracted to someone of the same sex, what that means in terms of spirituality. For some reason, I chose to explore this new path. And that meant being really honest with my husband at the time, who was really incredible. It was very painful for him and for me as well, but really painful for him. And then the entire group of friends around that. And I felt like I lost an entire world, because my world was my church friends. That was my predominant world. And understandably, they opted to support him. So I was really the baddie in that picture, but I was choosing for myself. And it's always that very fine line. Anyway, that was a really big one for me. And then that's obviously they've been more along the way where we've outgrown each other or distance. But I've even found now, moving to the UK, how challenging that can be in friendships. I mean, even if I think of myself and Petra, who it was very difficult for me to leave her behind, and she felt abandoned as well, not in just such an obvious way, once we unpack the layers of it. But making real concerted effort to connect, to make sure we are checking in on each other in a real way, and we don't always get it right, but it takes quite a lot of work. So what I end up finding is I feel like I'm spreading myself thin to have enough time for your partner, for my family, like to find time for those that are closest to me at the same time as trying to get used to the insanity that is living in London in terms of time-wise. So there have been friendships that have fallen by the wayside, even people that live here in London who I've been here for 2 years and haven't gotten to see. Doesn't mean they're no longer my friends, but you've just, there's a drifting apart that happens. So it's a little bit painful for me because as you ask, there's still great love for those people, but that doesn't mean that we're in each other's lives in the way that we used to be. What was it like for you leaving South Africa and going into the Netherlands for friendship?
Pretty easy, because I left South Africa during COVID. So everyone was locked up.
I loved COVID. I'm sorry, I just had to admit that it was for someone
it was
like
great for me as well. Yeah, it was great for me as well. I mean,
never leave your house. I was like, yes. Sorry,
insane. And like the next year, having to reintegrate into society was so hard. It was like, I have to go into the office, and engage with people? No, thanks. No, it was a little bit easier, just because at the same time, a lot of close friends had also moved within country, and so I besides like you and family, it wasn't really hard for me to leave SA from a friendship perspective. So I think one of the things about me as well is that I haven't retained friendships from years ago. A lot of my friendships have been reason or season, and so Mama's like a rolling stone. Uh, and so you're either part of my life now, and we can have a great friend. We could have a good friendship, or you're not. Although I must say that there are friends, and as you've just said, sometimes when you're living so far apart, you really catch up and it's superficial, but you can still have great love for them. And you know that if you see them, well, at least I know if I see them in person, it will be, right back to where we started, and it'll be an easy catch up. And then, there are friendships where it's absolutely, we've just outgrown each other. I'm no longer that person. I could still, have a conversation with you, etc. But it would be in the moment and then move on. You're not adding anything to my life, whether I see you or I don't see you. And it's got nothing to do with them. I think it's just, it's a lot to do with me, but it's also the world that we live in. And so it's very much about being present and in the now. And yeah, and so it wasn't that hard. I think the challenging part about leaving SA and moving to the Netherlands was a mind shift in terms of making friends here. And I have to say that I haven't been great in that. Although I have made a couple of good friends, those are people that have just kind of found their way to me. I haven't really gone to join a club or made the effort of seeking out friendship, which I probably should make more of an effort on, but just the idea exhausts me. So I don't know if that's going to happen.
That would mean you would have to stop spending a couple of hours a day speaking to your sister and actually engaging with the rest of the world. And
Yes.
for me too.
Because we speak a couple of times. I mean, I don't know how Nathan puts up with us.
I know. I try and do it in hours when he's
not around.
Well, though you've got a great friendship as well. So, sometimes I'm the one who has to butt in and say, can I get some airtime here, please?
Exactly.
Sis, but then what about those friendships as well that are actually friendships that we need to choose to let go of? Because that's something that I found really difficult to do. And I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching this have people in their lives and they're just, as you saying, they're just not contributing anything, or what they are contributing is toxic. Because I know when you and I talk, because we really want to look at the best in life. We've both been in situations where we've been with friends or around people who have not brought out the best in us, and our nervous systems are completely compromised. Have you had friendships like that you've had to actually actively let go of, and how did you do that?
Yeah, I would love to say that I handled it with great maturity. But I'm a very vocal individual. So if something is not working, and look, it takes a long time for me to let go. If I've allowed you into my life, it's really hard for me to let go. But what I have started to appreciate and work more on is there an easier exchange? Not that it needs to be easy, because some friendships are intense, and that's okay. But is it still adding value? And if it's not adding value, and you feel drained, or you feel that this is just not happening, or it's not working, I think it's important to have a conversation, because it might just be a misunderstanding, or someone is going through something, and so they're not showing up in a great way. So I would always start with a conversation. I mean, in the past, I have written lengthy emails breaking up with friends because of their behavior. But now I'm a little more mature, and so I try to have a discussion in terms of, this is how I'm feeling, and it's not necessarily anything the other person has done, but can we explore what this might be? And if that doesn't work, well, I try once or twice. The third time, I just cut off, which is not necessarily the maturer way or the nicer way, but you've got to protect your own energy, I think. And sometimes it's just situations where you come to a realization that there is no conversation to be had, because perhaps someone's betrayed you, or you found out that they are trash talking you. Then it's just, you just need to cut the snake's head and move on with your life. But when I have moved on with my life, it's very difficult for me to come back to a conversation, etc. So now what I try and do is be a little bit more proactive. I think when I was younger, I was a lot more reactive, and I would hold on until I exploded. And then it was pretty easy, right? Because then there would be a fight and I've got a vicious tongue, and that would pretty much be the end of it. But yeah, I think you've got to assess it for yourself and figure out if there's something that can be saved, and if not, do what's right for you. It doesn't have to be dramatic. And I have had a situation like that a couple of years ago where there was just the energy wasn't great, and we just allowed that relationship to fall by the wayside. And when we saw each other thereafter, there was no like, do we need to have a conversation? Just hi, how are you, and move on with your life.
The natural order of things, just allowing life to flow a little bit.
Absolutely. Ange, let's get down to some practical things that people can do. You raised earlier on almost 1 billion people don't have close friendships or don't feel that they have close friends.
Yeah, so that's almost 1 billion people saying they don't have any close friends.
And I would say, 1 billion is a lot considering that there's 8 billion people on the planet. But I would say a majority of those are probably people in first world countries.
Good point.
Because we know in third world countries, community is really it's the backbone of survival. And so I would say that is probably, you'll find a lot of that in Northwest Europe, the US, and maybe even some Asian or APAC cities, which makes it even more scary, actually, that there are so many people who don't have close relations. So what do you think? How do you think people approach that, or could approach that, in terms of turning that around? Should they want to?
Yeah. I think that as society, we probably have a role to play in that. So creating spaces in our communities where people can come together is helpful. It's particularly helpful even just for mental well-being. People that feel connected or that belong to a group, that belong to something, function better in their own lives and in society as a whole. So it's almost like those close friendships are a part of when we create community, when we create spaces for people to talk. And it's not natural for everyone. As we, even just between the two, you and I, the difference between us, I'm happy to walk down the road, have a deep conversation with someone at the bakery, go off and have coffee at their house, and, be best friends in a week's time. For you, Nathan, he will literally tell you all of it. We've counted his best friends because there were 20, however many.
There's
32. We can count them out.
But I've 32 best friends. 32 best friends.
But I've never met someone who's more of a social butterfly in my life. You can't get from the one side of the village to the other side of the village. So for some people, it's really natural and they don't need much help. But for a lot of other people, as society, I think that we have a responsibility, whether that's church groups, communities, libraries, whatever that is, to create a space where people can feel connected. And then also not taking away from businesses. So that's something that I do now in the corporate environment, is create engagement for people. So create spaces that people can come to and feel like they are part of. But then we also have our own responsibility, how we're showing up in the world. So as much as we want the world to contribute to us, what can we give back to society by way of that give and receive that we were talking about, the ebb and flow, that giving and receiving of energy. And then that naturally forms friendship. So that would be something that I would highlight. What about you?
I think it starts with the individual. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, that there's a responsibility, etc. But I think also, being more of the introverted type, I think it does really start with the individual in terms of identifying what are the things that you're interested in, and either formulating a group where you can meet people with similar interests, because as we've highlighted in terms of our own relationship, commonality is important. And yeah, so figuring out what that group might be. And it's like dating, you're going to kiss a number of frogs before you find your prince or your princess. And so you don't have to have 15 or 16 or 32 best friends if that's not your personality. But figure out what quality friendship and relationships look like to you, because they really are important. And there's a lot of, if you look at the blue zones, community and friendship and being able to laugh and all of that stuff that friendship gives you is so important to longevity and to health. And so even I realize how important friendship is. And I'm really fortunate that I do have two sisters that I'm very close to. I do also have other friends beyond my sisters, but it is important to have community. And especially as we're moving to the later part of the year where we have holidays, etc., those can be really very challenging times for people that are on their own.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point as we move into the festive season and all of that. For many years, a number of friends and I, or the businesses that I was working with, we would go and sing in old age homes, and, do little concerts or things like that. And I think that maybe that's a challenge I would put out. Is there thinking of, have you got a neighbor who's perhaps elderly or not even, just someone who appears to not have a close circle? How can you reach out and offer some friendship? Because sometimes it really is hard for people who feel like outcasts, or they feel like they are like there's no one else like them out there, to take that first step. So Sam says, take control of your own life. I agree 100%. And I'm saying, but reach out to someone around you who looks like they may need a little bit of a nudge and some help in that direction.
Yeah. Okay, sis, do we have anything else that we want to say on this topic?
The topic is one that we could speak about for hours and hours and hours, but at some point in time, we do need to actually finish this episode. So how should we close it?
Is there a question? Do you have a question from our takeaway questions? Okay, so the takeaway question today is, Ange, and it's one that you have to answer for yourself, and there's a reason why. If you were a crayon, what color would you be? And why?
I would be pink, because red is just a little too harsh. Red looks like you're marking. Pink. Look, even our labels on our chat are pink. I just love a pink crayon. They just sort of make the world a sparkly, soft, pretty, yummy place to be. Go pink.
If there was any doubt, that we are sisters, the color I was going to pick is pink too.
Black.
I know it's a surprise.
Oh, were you?
Pink, yeah. But maybe we would have different shades. Mine would be like maybe not a pastel, but like a soft pink, a pale pink, or a fuchsia.
Yes. Well, various shades of pink. We can have a whole selection of pink. The same color that our unicorns are wrapped up, the same color of the bows on our unicorns. Okay, well, pink it is. Yes, I think we're going to have to wrap it up because we have not had our tequila yet, and we have to have a tequila with every episode. So, this glass has been sitting here waiting for us. This is to cheers on friendship, sisterhood, but friendship, adult friendships. And what will it take for all of us to honor the friendship we have with ourselves and with others? Here's to that.
Here's to you.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening. Remember, we drop an episode every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central European Time. And if you want to email us with comments or feedback, feel free to email us at notuspod@gmail.com. And remember to subscribe to our channels at Not Us Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and catch us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.